All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the weekly webinar, our last one for May 2024. Time is really flying, I think. And I know I always look forward to Thursday afternoons when we can have some good information and conversation, and today will be no different. I'll remind everyone to please mute yourselves. Looks like everyone is muted, which is great, except for, of course, Rosie and me, and I'll mute in just a moment. Feel free to close caption the talk today. You can find the CC button at the bottom of your screen, and captions will come up so that you can follow along. And use the chat feature if you have questions or comments while our presenter is sharing. And then the final announcement I have today is that on Monday, June 3rd, starts our next session of the Mediterranean diet class that the LEAP folks do, and we know how wonderful Rosie is at doing that, Rosie and Rachel. So you should, if you subscribe to My Alliance, have all the information you need to sign up for that class. If not, send an email to myalliance@kumc.edu and we'll be happy to get you set up. So with that, I am happy to introduce Rosie Pasqualini, who will talk with us today about the truth about brain training. And I admit that I wanted to, in the My Alliance newsletter and on the slideshow, I wanted to put truth in like big, scary red letters because it just seems like there's going to be something really fascinating about the truth about brain training. You can hardly turn your TV on anymore or go to the grocery store or the pharmacy without seeing the whole display of all of these magic pills that purport to help your brain. But Rosie is going to tell us the truth. And we know we can trust her. Yeah, we can trust Rosie and her expertise. So with that, Rosie, thank you. As one more thing, of course, many of you know Rosie from being the LEAP program assistant and all-around wonderful person here at the KU ADRC. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in cognitive science, so we can absolutely go with what she says. So, Rosie, thank you so much for being here today, and it's all yours.
Yay, thank you for that lovely introduction. I don't think the truth about brain training games is exactly sinister, but I think it is interesting and good to know about. So I'm looking forward to presenting today. Let me just share my screen and we will get started. All right, so discussing the truth about brain training. Here, by brain training, I'm specifically referring to brain training games. So specific programs that you may have heard of that are designed to sort of help improve your brain skills and perhaps your brain health in a kind of graded manner where they adapt to your current cognitive levels. So we're talking about computerized brain training here. And here is what we are going to cover today. First, we're going to talk about defining brain training and brain training games. We'll discuss why brain training could support cognitive function, but we'll also explore some controversy and issues surrounding this topic. I'll provide some examples of brain training programs that are either more or less evidence-based. And we'll also discuss some alternatives to brain training games that you may enjoy as well. Then after some final thoughts, I will facilitate a short, brief demo of a couple of popular brain training programs, just so you can get a sense of what they're like. So as I mentioned, here we're defining brain training or brain training games as computerized tasks that are specifically designed to strengthen cognitive abilities. Typically, these programs will focus on our executive function skills. Those are often skills involved with planning and kind of getting things done and problem solving. So that will often encompass our working memory, our attention, and similar skills. However, even though there's typically less of a focus on skills such as creativity or social skills, those types of skills do still have some intersections with executive function, with the skills that computerized training, brain training often addresses. So the line's a little bit blurry. But here, as you can see, this is a fond memory of my childhood. It's called Brain Age 2. I think it's specifically Brain Age Squared, actually, because they were trying to be clever. But this was a brain training game that I played when I was probably 12 or 13 years old on the Nintendo DS. That purported to help improve very specific cognitive skills. This strange Tetris-like game was supposed to improve, I think, your spatial recognition and pattern. But that's my sort of little personal connection to the history of brain training. It was a lot of fun. And in fact, these games did begin getting traction around the early 2000s, though they have been around for a little bit longer than that. This is just an example of kind of what you'll see if you use a typical brain training program. This one is called Lumosity. There's some controversy around this program that I will discuss, but I do think it's a good example of how these programs are often set up. So you'll see we have just a recommended brain workout at the top, as well as specific workouts or exercises designed to help challenge certain abilities. But in addition to that, I don't know too much about Lumosity scoring specifically, but you'll see they've tried to give you sort of an objective appraisal of your current cognitive skills. And typically these programs will tailor the exercises that you do to your current abilities, as well as which specific areas you would like to get better in. And this was another sort of neat example, I think, from their website, just showcasing how some of these games or activities may be developed. So on the left, you can see these dots are showing a task, a cognitive task known as multiple object tracking. This is sort of an attention and visual task where you track where certain objects are moving and then remember and identify their locations. So this may be sometimes used in cognitive testing, but for this particular program, they turned it into a game called Playing Coy, where you're tracking the locations of fish. So that's just kind of one example of how these games may be inspired or developed. Here are some reasons why brain training could help. We know that regular cognitive engagement can help rewire our brain. And cognitive engagement generally encompasses any activity that challenges and then potentially improves our cognitive abilities. So this is a very wide range of activities that could include things like having a stimulating conversation or reading a good book or learning a new skill, or even things like visiting a new location. Anything that kind of pushes your mind a little bit or exposes you to novelty. We know that frequently engaging in these kinds of activities could help increase our brain's resilience, because when we learn new things and practice skills, we are building up new connections in our brains that may help to compensate for and even potentially prevent damage. So essentially, if part of the brain is partially compromised by something such as Alzheimer's disease or by age-related wear and tear, the theory is that if we have a lot of other connections in the brain, just kind of a lot of connections built up, those could take the place of some of the essentially damage that is going on and help to compensate for that loss through rewiring of those skills. And so this is just a hypothesis. It's called the cognitive reserve hypothesis. But this is why it's thought that regular engagement can be good for our long-term brain. And brain training, at least in theory, is kind of designed to supercharge this rewiring, helping us to build a lot of connections in a lot of different areas. We know that brain training could help to target specific brain functions, at least that's a goal of brain training. And when the exercises are sort of well built, the goal would be to target a wide variety of those functions as well. So you're really forming a lot of different types of connections, different skill sets in different areas, both like metaphorically and literally different areas of your brain. And another benefit of brain training, right, is that these programs are often designed to try and give you an optimal level of challenge. So you're really building your mental skill set without it being too easy or without it being too frustrating. I want to mention that, so the research on brain training is fairly mixed, but here are some more positive study examples that are sort of landmark studies in the exploration of brain training game effectiveness. There was a large study called IMPACT in 2009. This was specifically regarding the brain training program Brain HQ. And in this study, 500 older adults, so a fairly large sample, with normal cognition used Brain HQ for an hour a day, 5 days a week for a total of 8 weeks. And they did appear to have an overall pretty significant improvement in both their memory and attention. Another example of a study with positive results was one more recently, of course, called Synergic. And this was a study of 175 older adults with mild cognitive impairments. They used a specific brain training program called NeuroPeak, as well as some arms of the intervention featured exercise and vitamin D supplementation, the goal being to improve cognitive performance. This was a 20-week intervention, and ultimately, the brain training program NeuroPeak had positive effects overall, and brain training as well as the exercise had the strongest benefit on these participants, helping to support their cognitive abilities. In case you're curious, the vitamin D supplementation did not have a significant effect, but that would likely be because if you're not deficient, you're probably not being, affected by a lack of vitamin D in terms of your brain. So there's a fairly good body of evidence in favor of brain training, but there are also a lot of limitations and considerations to keep in mind. One is that brain training can be overly targeted, and this sometimes reflects in study results as well, making it a little harder to know whether a sort of true cognitive improvement or protection is actually being measured. What happens is sometimes when we participate in a brain training game, we may improve a specific ability, such as our attention or our memory within the game. We keep getting better and better at the game, but this may not always transfer to other areas of life. It can be hard to measure the ultimate transfer of the skills, and so this is a key limitation of some of these studies to keep in mind. Another thing that's not quite a limitation, but more of a consideration, is just that individuals may respond to brain training quite differently, depending on their cognitive status or lifestyle factors or lots of other things. And so this may be one reason why the research, the current evidence is pretty mixed. In addition, this is true to a certain extent for a variety of research products, but especially with brain training. Research will sometimes be done specifically with the goal of selling the product, as opposed to making sure that the game is truly effective. And so that's sort of something to keep in mind. It doesn't always mean that the research done by the company is flawed, but they may sort of publicize those results and not necessarily share results that were more negative. And then last but not least, just something to keep in mind is that while there is research supporting the idea that brain training can improve our cognitive health in the short or medium term, so usually weeks to months, research for ultimate sort of dementia or brain health outcomes are more limited. That's still a sort of topic of consideration right now. So one example of a controversial occurrence with a brain training program was a large Lumosity lawsuit. Lumosity, I did provide an example from them a few slides ago, and they are still a major brain training program today. But in 2017, the makers of this very popular program were fined $2 million due to deceptive advertising. And the fine was actually higher. That was just the amount that the creators were able to pay at the time. What happened is that the creators of Lumosity, Lumos Labs, claimed that their program could prevent Alzheimer's and that it could reduce symptoms of neurological conditions such as ADHD. These claims, while there was some support for a little bit of what they were saying, overall really lacked evidence and targeted consumers' brain health concerns. And so this is just kind of an example of brain training gone wrong, or maybe the company not being super transparent about the effectiveness of their product. And as I mentioned, Lumosity is still one of the most popular programs on the market today. they have improved their research, but I'm personally still a bit skeptical about Lumosity. So discussing which programs could actually help us support brain health. As you may know, sometimes researchers will do a meta-analysis, which is where they look at a whole lot of studies together that are targeting the same thing, and seeing how all of their results go together and what they mean. So there are some meta-analyses looking at many specific studies that are examining brain training program effectiveness. And in some of these large meta studies, brain training programs of different types do seem to help boost cognitive abilities, again, in the shorter to moderate term, so weeks or months. An example of this was a systematic review last year called The Efficacy of Cognitive Training on Neuropsychological Outcomes in Mild Cognitive Impairment, meta-analysis. That is a long title, but essentially they were looking at 31 different studies and found that overall, in the moderate term, typical brain training programs helped to improve overall cognitive performance. So it's still kind of believed that no brain training programs are indisputably effective. And what that means is they may not work for everyone. There are sometimes flaws in the methodology. So we need to partially take some of this with a grain of salt. However, it's clear from studies like this large one that I mentioned that some programs are more evidence-based than others and could help support brain health. I'm going to give just a couple of examples of less evidence-based and then more evidence-based brain training programs, just because I think it's sort of interesting. One is CogMed. This is a fairly popular program that is designed to train attention specifically. And it was originally designed for children, but it was then used to support the brain health of older adults as well. Essentially, it is most effective in children, and even though the evidence for its effectiveness in older adults is kind of mixed, it is still being offered for older adults specifically. So that one appears to be less evidence-based, based on all of the reading and research that I did. And another one that I just kind of explored was called BrainGymmer. This is a program that was designed to train multiple cognitive functions, so pretty typical. And something interesting about this program was that participants reported positive results sort of in their mental performance, but the quote unquote more objective results, like of actual cognitive testing, were more mixed. So that kind of illustrates an interesting case where we don't want to totally discount those subjective feelings of improvement, but it's important to have more objective metrics as well. Based on the research that I did on this topic, two of the most or more evidence-based programs I was able to find are BrainHQ and Cognifit. If you've participated in LEAP before, we mentioned BrainHQ in the social and cognitive engagement section of Brain Health Bootcamp. This is one of the largest brain training programs, and there is a relatively large amount of research showing that it can improve multiple cognitive functions, and that this improvement can occur both in those who are impaired and non-impaired. So that's one that we generally recommend if you are interested in trying something like this. In addition, another more evidence-based program I discovered was called Cognifit. This is more specifically geared toward older adults, and there is research showing that, again, in the short to moderate term, it may improve the cognitive function of older adults. One thing that I like about Cognifit is they do also share direct research links on their website, cognifit.com. So those are just a couple of examples of programs that are a bit more evidence-based that we might be able to recommend. Just a quick overview of sort of the pricing and details of these programs. I am obviously not affiliated with either of these, and they are quite expensive, so that's something to keep in mind. But a lot of pricing of brain training programs will be sort of around these ranges. With BrainHQ, it gives you a pretty wide range, 29 games that adjust to your abilities. There's a limited free version, but it typically costs about $14 a month, and it's available on basically all platforms, which is nice. Cognifit is pretty similar. It tracks 20 separate cognitive skills, which I think is pretty neat. It's a little more expensive. It's about $20 a month, and again, available on the majority of platforms. I did want to mention, though, some alternatives to brain training, these brain training programs. Because as I sort of described, brain training games are really just one form of cognitive engagement. And cognitive engagement, again, is any activity that challenges and helps to improve our mental abilities. And these are, not activities that we're necessarily doing in complete isolation, right? They're things that we may do throughout our day with other people that are really woven into the fabric of our day. So again, having engaging conversations, learning a skill, reading a book, trying a recipe, etc. And research suggests that engaging in a variety of these activities regularly can have a positive impact on brain health. There's more evidence about general cognitive engagement and its brain health benefits than there is for these really targeted brain training programs. In terms of our individual needs for cognitive engagement overall, research suggests that we want to prioritize, again, variety, challenge, and fun, and that these will really help you get the most out of your mentally stimulating activities. So for sort of the best brain health benefits, we would usually recommend pairing just overall engagement with some of those activities I just mentioned, with maybe one or two more challenging hobbies that you do perhaps once or twice a week. So I want to have a variety of different activities with different difficulty levels. And of course, having fun is important as well. I didn't mention this on the slide, but fun is not just good for its own sake. It also has sort of some brain health benefits because there are some complex links between brain health and mood. So all three of those things are important. And as I mentioned, trying something new appears to be especially good for brain health. So embrace novelty when seeking out these stimulating activities. You also, importantly, do not have to be good at a hobby or a task, etc., to have a brain benefit. We can kind of make an analogy to physical exercise, where, even if you can't run a marathon or something like that, even if you're getting started with walking or jogging, we see pretty immediate benefits in your cardiovascular health as long as you are challenging yourself. And we can kind of say a similar thing here with our mental and cognitive engagement. So some final thoughts. Brain training, it may have benefits, but it definitely doesn't replace other forms of cognitive engagement. If you are really interested in trying out brain training games, we would recommend both Brain HQ and or Cognifit as pretty decent options with relatively more research behind them. In addition, pairing our mental exercise with regular physical exercise appears to boost the effectiveness of our cognitive engagement. And I find this really interesting. So one thing that happens when we get regular physical exercise is we produce more of a hormone that tells our brain to grow new brain cells. And this can really help with kind of keeping our brain flexible. So getting both that regular mental engagement and physical exercise, doesn't have to be at the same time, but it can, is a good sort of 1-2 punch for boosting your brain health. And finally, as I'm saying ad infinitum, challenging our mind in a wide variety of ways, whether or not that includes a specific brain training program, is really thought or has been sometimes shown to help protect and support our long-term brain health. All right, those are the slides. We're going to do a short demo of just a couple brain training games now, because I thought that would be kind of fun. So if you'll bear with me for just a minute, I need to switch my screen share and get something pulled up here. But feel free to pop any questions in the chat if anything comes up while I'm getting this ready. All right, so I was going to do a brief demo both of Brain HQ and of one part of Cognifit, so you can see what it's like. This is the free version of BrainHQ. It's quite limited, of course. I wish they offered, better free versions. But what this one does is that it is offering me a specific exercise based on some of my previous scores and preferences. And this is a target tracking exercise. Actually, I think this is the same one that was demoed in the alumni group brain training presentation, if you're here for that. But let's just take a look, and hopefully my sound will be shared as well. We'll read the description first. Target tracker is an exercise that challenges you to keep track of some moving items while ignoring others. This skill is important when you watch or play team sports, drive a vehicle, and in many other situations. And here it says that it's a multiple object tracking exercise, which is interesting because that was what that fish exercise that I showed is as well. All right, let's give it a try.
Take a look at the two bubbles below. When you start the exercise, they will begin moving. Your job is to keep track of them.
All right, we're going to keep track of these bubbles. Are you all able to hear the sound?
Click the arrow to continue.
Okay, I didn't hear a response, but I'm just going to guess that you're able to hear the sound.
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
All right, let's give it a try. Thank you.
Click Start to begin.
All right, we're keeping track of these bubbles.
Keeping track of the bubbles by themselves may have been easy, but what if we added more bubbles to distract you? This time, after the bubbles start moving, we'll add a few more. Keep track of the two you see first and ignore the others. Click Start to begin.
All right, let's try this. I think it's just those two.
Good job! In this exercise, you're training your attention to help you notice important details in the world around you while ignoring unimportant ones. At a busy intersection, this skill can help you track cars, pedestrians, and other things that you need to follow in order to be safe.
All right,
Click Start when you are ready.
Also, don't worry, I'm not going to do this for, the rest of this presentation, just to see what it's like. All right, maybe let's do one more.
That's right.
You'll
You'll notice that when the exercise will keep getting harder until you reach your threshold, which is when the exercise is challenging but not impossible for you.
So yeah, that threshold training, at least, when backed by research, is a really cool feature of programming.
Click the arrow. Training at your threshold is important for changing your brain and improving your cognitive health. Click Start when you are ready to try another one.
All right, let's do it. This one is harder. Okay. I think it's these three, but that was a little more challenging.
Try a few more.
Let's do one more and then we can wrap this up because I think you all get the idea, but I hope you're having a bit of fun following along as well. Okay. All right, so that is just a game example from BrainHQ specifically. I'm going to close out of that, and then I think I would also show you something from Cognifit that I thought was interesting. Before I show you any of this, huge disclaimer that while Cognifit is evidence-based, I don't know how this cognitive assessment would compare to like an actual neuropsych test. So this is not, it's likely not a true diagnostic test or anything like that, but it said when I joined Cognifit that they do this initial test to kind of help calibrate the difficulty of the exercises that follow. And so I have not done this. I thought it would be interesting to just do the very beginning and see how exactly they're going to calibrate our settings here. All right, full screen mode. I hope that this keeps the screen share going. Interesting format. Okay, this is a response time test. There's a rectangle in the center of the screen. Click on it as many times and as fast as you can until the time runs out. Okay, I think this one may be a bit boring to watch, but we will do it anyway. Maybe it will secretly be fun. All right. This is practice. Okay, the first 5 seconds will be for practice, and then the test will start. Interesting, we're getting some feedback here. Okay. I am clicking as fast as I physically can. Man, it must be hard to get a really high score. Okay. Interesting. I guess we're done with that one. This is going to be a similar task, I think. Click in the middle of the circles as quickly as possible. This is another hand-eye coordination and focused attention test. Let's see what this is like. All right, try to press in the middle of the circles as quickly as possible. Sorry, I don't know why that went away. Let's try one more time. Right? Yes, let's start the test. This is interesting because there's some evidence that playing video games, even though that's a little bit complicated, especially playing too many video games, but overall, there's strong evidence that, oh, I wasn't supposed to. Video games can benefit as well. And so, you know, the here are clearly strong. I'm trying to click in the center, but the zoom bar is at the bottom, so it's a little challenging sometimes. All right. That was exciting. I think we can be done there. I think you all get the point, but I hope that was at least a little bit fun to watch. Oh, someone said couldn't hear your commentary in the game. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. Were you all able to hear me?
Rosie, there was a little bit of conflict with the sound from the game. So if you wouldn't, I think I heard you say something about the Zoom box was maybe interfering with your being able to click.
I could hear.
It was just at the end, like your last game.
Just fine.
Okay. Well, that's good to know for the future. Yeah, I had no idea. But I hope you found that at least a little bit entertaining and interesting. And as we wrap up here, I just wanted to share a couple of other quick things. We have completed the demo. So as I briefly mentioned at the beginning, and as Kelly mentioned, I am a program assistant at LEAP. That stands for Lifestyle Empowerment for Alzheimer's Prevention. And we provide sort of a variety of courses that are geared at boosting and protecting brain health through sort of healthy habits. And this presentation has some connections to our healthy habits. As I mentioned, cognitive engagement is a major brain health habit that we cover at LEAP. So if you're interested in learning more about how sort of certain behaviors and habits affect brain health, here are some of our upcoming programs. We have a Mediterranean diet course that is actually going to begin this coming Monday, June 3rd. And in this 4-week course, we have live Zoom classes once a week with Q&A with our registered dietitian, Rachel Sandoval. She is amazing. She's the program manager, and she also teaches this whole course. And what she will cover in this program is we do an overview of the Mediterranean diet. We talk about how to build brain healthy meals. We talk about nutrient boosting tips and tricks. And finally, we cover healthy fats. And sort of all this stuff can have an impact on brain health because out of many different types of therapeutic diets, the Mediterranean diet has some of the most compelling evidence behind it as being good for our brain health as well as our general. In addition, we provide meal guides, we provide various resources, recipes, and we have a weekly recipe challenge. So I think it's a pretty fun course, and it's open to anyone, completely free. As I mentioned, starts this coming Monday. We'll meet from 1 to 2 p.m. on Zoom. But if you're not able to make the live meetings, we do also send recordings to everyone who registers. And you can visit kubrainhealth.org/LEAP to register. Last but not least, we have our longer course that is currently enrolling as well. This is Brain Health Bootcamp. And what we do in this course is we cover a variety of lifestyle areas and how they affect brain health. So we talk about nutrition, like in the Mediterranean diet course. We talk about sleep, we talk about exercise, we talk about cognitive engagement, as I mentioned, and a couple of others. This is a 6-week course, again, with those weekly Zoom meetings, and our next class is going to begin on July 11th. Rachel Sandoval teaches the majority of that course, and I also teach the sleep and stress week, as well as the social and cognitive engagement week. So those brain training games may be briefly mentioned again. But we'd love to have you at either of these programs. They're completely free, and please visit kubrainhealth.org/leap if you are interested. Okay, I went a little bit fast there, but if there are any thoughts or questions, I'm happy to answer those. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rosie. There was a question in the chat about whether you're familiar with the Brain HQ game Double Decision.
You know what? I am actually not, but thank you for mentioning that. I will look into that specific game. I understand this game had been used in a large study looking at whether those who played the game were less likely to develop dementia. Thank you for mentioning that. I'll look into it.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you find out anything, Rosie, let us know, and we'll share it in a future webinar or the My Alliance newsletter.
Sounds good. Yeah, we can add it as a brain tip.
That's a great idea. And I have some ideas for the next Brain Booster. So thank you, Rosie. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Next week, we will hear from Hector Rodriguez, who is the long-term care ombudsman for the state of Kansas. If you've never heard that funny word, ombudsman, you'll get to hear more about that next week. I'll give you a sneak peek. An ombudsman, the translation to English is advocate. So an ombudsman is someone who advocates. And so in long-term care, we know that those folks can particularly use some assistance from someone. So Hector will join us next Thursday to talk about what a long-term care ombudsman can do for caregivers and for folks who are in nursing facilities, assisted living, long-term care facilities, so on and so forth. And if you are someone who does not live in Kansas, never fear. Every state has long-term care ombudsmen. So this will be beneficial to you. We'll have more information in the next My Alliance newsletter about what that will be about. So same time, same place next Thursday. Again, thank you, Rosie, and everybody have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good job, Rosie.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you see my message, Rosie?
I think she did, David. I think she's gone, but yes, I think she saw you in the chat. I'm glad you made it. Take care. Bye, everyone.